Good afternoon. My name is Todd Park. I'm the interim administrator for the Taxi Cab Authority, and I know that we have some staff members up in Reno or in Carson City, I believe, as well. And I'm here to answer any questions that you guys may have. I've asked for 4 new positions with all the bells and whistles that go with those 4 positions, and I'm happy to answer any questions that I can about that.
Thank you so much. We do have some questions. We will first go to Assemblywoman Gorlow.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I do have a question about your 4 compliance and enforcement investigator positions. Can you talk a little bit about how it will improve the agency's ability to carry out its regulatory and enforcement duties?
Thank you for the question. Again, Todd Park for the record. The Taxi Cab Authority has been hit with a couple of different situations over the past several years. Back in 2015, the TNCs were allowed to operate in the state of Nevada, which really kind of decimated the industry, the taxi cab industry, especially in Clark County area. Started to recover or at least level off with that, and then COVID decided to come along and rear its ugly head. And that, again, just really kind of took the taxi cab industry down. During that period of time, I believe we had looking back to 2019, we used that as a baseline to kind of see where we were at then and where we're at right now, and we have lost several positions. Getting these 4 positions back is going to get us kind of back up to a level area that we can start to regulate much better than what we're doing right now because we've lost so many positions. And I believe those 4 positions are really going to help us in that area.
Thank you very much. And if it's okay, may I have some follow-up? Thank you very much, Chair. Going through our backup documents, it also looks like you used to go a 24/7 schedule. And so I was just kind of curious, what repercussions have you had since you've reduced operations from that 24/7 schedule?
Very good question. Thank you. Again, Todd Park for the record. That the 24-hour-a-day schedule is something that was happening before the TNCs came into town. I believe it was there for a little while afterwards as well. But right now, to be honest, I'm only being able to work 2 swing shifts a week, and we do that on Friday and Saturday night. And the reason, obviously, is because of the positions that we have lost. It's been it's affected our agency quite a bit with the way that we have had to handle our enforcement and regulation of the industry. And at the end of the day, the bottom line is for safety for our traveling public. And that's definitely in jeopardy when we don't have the people that we need and the resources that we need to be able to do that. And taking away that 24-hour a day really hurt us.
Thank you. So would it be fair to say that your goal is to go back to a 24/7 operation?
Again, Todd Park for the record. I think long-term, I would really like to take a look at that. Again, I'm trying to get back up to just a baseline. And I think we will be able to evaluate much better once we get back up to that baseline and see if that's necessary or not. I think one of the big things that happens in Las Vegas especially is the airport really slows down. And so I'm not sure that a 24-hour period is going to be needed, at least right now, and certainly not until I get enough people to be able to do that.
Well, thank you very much, and good luck. And Chair, that's all my questions.
Thank you so much. Members, do we have any additional questions from the Taxi Cab Authority? Okay. With that, I will entertain a motion to approve Agenda M33 as stated.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So moved.
I have a first from Senator Don Darrell Loop, a second from Speaker Yeager. Is there any discussion on the motion? Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The motion carries. Thank you so much. With that, we will go ahead and move to agenda items, and we're going to hear these all together. So it's going to be agenda items M40, 42, 43, 44, and then also informational item S7B. So we'd welcome the Department of Health and Human Services up, and we would ask you can go ahead and present on all of those items. We won't break them up.
Good afternoon, committee members. Stacy Weeks for the record, Administrator at the Nevada Medicaid Program, Division of Healthcare Financing and Policy. I have with me here today Jennifer Krupp, our new fiscal deputy, and Lynette Aaron, our senior budget officer. Today, I'll start with M40 and 42, if that's okay with members. Those two go together. These two work programs represent the transfer of about $103,500 in federal Medicaid funds and $103,500 in hospital provider assessment funds from the Improved Healthcare Quality and Access account to support our efforts at Nevada Medicaid to improve access to services for children with serious behavioral health disorders. These funds will be used to support the contract the division currently has with HMA through December of this year. This contract support with HMA will assist my team with putting together a timeline and plan for implementing the requirements of the state settlement agreement with the Department of Justice. As members may recall, the state was found to be in violation of the Americans with Disabilities Act for children with serious behavioral health disorders and has been negotiating a settlement agreement with the Department of Justice to come into compliance with the ADA. These negotiations have been going on for the last 12 months. Specifically, this means that when we invest as a state any public dollars into healthcare, we cannot solely focus those dollars on services that will lead primarily to institutionalization. So specifically for children, we need to look at more home and community-based services and supports for families. Thanks to the governor and lawmakers last session, Nevada Medicaid has ongoing resources to support these efforts, which include critically important new services for children with behavioral health disorders, which will also include rate increases for providers that serve this population. These resources come from a portion of the revenue from the private hospital tax, which Nevada Medicaid can match with federal Medicaid dollars to build out services and supports that will keep these children and hopefully over time adults out of the ER, our inpatient settings, and hopefully out of our residential treatment settings and back into our communities. As of today, we are still in negotiations with the DOJ, so I cannot speak to the details of these services, rate increases, and other program changes that we'll be proposing. But what I can say today is that this work program represents the first step in this process, so we have the support and capacity we need to build out our plan and seek all federal approval to move forward. All of these proposed changes will be brought back to this committee for your approval, hopefully in the coming months, if all goes well. I cannot speak to more details than that, but I'm very hopeful that we'll be standing in front of you, hopefully this summer or sooner, with the proposed changes. With that, I stand for questions for these two work programs.
We're going to go ahead and have you continue on, if you don't mind, with agenda items M43 and 44 as well. And then if you don't mind, also covering the informational item S7B as well. And then we'll ask some questions.
Okay. Stacy Weeks for the record. I'm going to defer to Lynette Aaron on my team to do those two work programs. Thank you.
Thank you. For the record, Lynette Aaron, Division of Healthcare Financing and Policy. So agenda items M43 and M44 are specific to the non-federal share of the supplemental payments that we distribute to the private hospitals with the hospital provider tax program. So when we originally built the budget, we anticipated only distributing half of the payments in state fiscal year 2024 due to the timing of when the first assessment would be due from the hospitals, which began in January this year. However, we did receive CMS approval to make those supplemental payments for the UPL programs for the full year of state fiscal year 24.
Thank you, Lynette. Madam Chair, committee member Stacy Weeks for the record. We'll move on to the item around the provider tax update. So I'm happy to report that we, as of today, have received all federal approvals to move forward with the program. There were 3, and typically the third one around state-directed payments can take months, and we were very pleased that mid-December we had all approvals to move forward. As of date, we are currently midway through our first quarter of this program. We have issued 2 rounds of tax invoices to private hospitals, which they have all paid. We're very happy about that, so thank you. And subsequently, we have also submitted, or we will be submitting 2 rounds of payments this quarter. To give committee members a sense of the amount of these payments, we are showing that by the end of this state fiscal year, which is June 30th, 2024, Nevada private hospitals will have received a total of $552.6 million in new Medicaid supplemental payments. By the end of state fiscal year 2025, which begins July 1 of this year, we are projected to pay a total of approximately $927 million to Nevada private hospitals through this new tax and payment program. I just want to say that this is a very important piece. All of us have worked very hard in implementing this. The success, though, of this program is a large part of that is due to the partnership we have had with the Nevada Hospital Association. I think this partnership has been really key to making sure we were able to implement this successfully for all of the hospitals in the state. And with that, I think we stand ready for questions this time.
Thank you so much. With that, we'll start with Senator Nguyen.
Thank you. It's always nice to see you. I just have a couple of questions. I know you kind of answered it, but with around the hospital provider tax and that revenue that's coming back to the state that goes towards those mental health services, do we have an idea of when we'll see a plan like submitted on how we're going to expend those resources?
Madam Chair, committee member Stacy Weeks for the record. It all depends on when we sign that, when that agreement is signed. We are working very hard. I can't speak to timelines, but I can tell you I think we're close, I hope. But right when that's signed, I hope, and then, either that next IFC, we would be ready to bring you our proposal. We are working on it now, or the IFC after that. It just depends on timing. I would hope by June IFC that we would have something, but I don't want to promise and then have to come up here and tell you that we were wrong. So I'm truly reading the tea leaves here on this one. Hopefully that answers your question.
May I follow up, Chair? I have another question about that. Since it's taking a little bit longer in order to get that approved, to be able to come up with a plan to expend those resources, would the funds be backdated, though, towards, the funds that are just kind of accumulating there now?
Madam Chair, committee member Stacy Weeks for the record. Yes and no. It depends on how we implement. If we're going to add new services, for example, we will need time to do that work and put that together. That's one of the reasons we needed the funds here today to help with our HMA, our contracted vendor, to get going on that work. It just depends on federal approval. Sometimes, for example, let's say we submit a proposal in July. I'm just predicting, or maybe not. Maybe it's August to CMS for approval. We can ask for a retroactive effective date. It just depends on the CMS process. But those funds will continue to be in that account. My understanding is that we can use them when we are ready and we have approval from the federal level to match those dollars. Currently, for this state fiscal year, we are estimating that we will have $28 million ready to go when we are ready to start moving forward with these services.
Thank you.
Members, do we have any other questions for, I see a hand. We'll go with Senator Titus first.
Madam Chair, appreciate it. And I just want to compliment Ms. Weeks on the presentation and the information she brought forward. So I just want to just reiterate and just clarify that one of the arguments for this provider tax was that we were leaving federal monies on the table, and that by implementing the provider tax, we would be drawing more than we paid in. And so just want a clarification, if I might, on these numbers. So you said that we actually paid in, providers did, $552 million, but we are set to draw back 927 million. Is that correct?
Madam Chair, Stacy Weeks for the record. Thank you, Senator Titus, for the question. No, in total, so if you consider how much they paid in the state share plus the federal money, the total for this state fiscal year is in payments, so not including the amount they paid, is $552 million. So it's new Medicaid payments. But when we subtract the amount that they paid, I'll have Lynette Aaron hopefully give that number here in a second. But for that second year, the total payment is the $927 million. Lynette, can you give the difference there?
For the record, Lynette Aaron. Yes, so the total payments that we're making is the $552 million, but the amount that the hospitals had to pay in taxes was only $190 million approximately.
That's great clarification, and thank you both. So I would say that's a pretty good argument for our monies. Thank you.
We'll go to Majority Leader Canizero.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I just have a follow-up question to Senator Titus's questions. This $552 million, and then I think you said in the second year it's 972 or thereabouts. That's money. That's sort of the total less what the providers pay in tax, which is the 190 for this year. The rest of that money, though, is money that is paid back to the providers, so to the hospitals.
Madam Chair, committee member Stacy Weeks for the record. Yes, so they pay, so for example, the example for this state fiscal year that Lynette Aaron just gave, that they paid a little bit over 190 million in taxes. That money is used to draw down the additional, I'm not good with math, so you have to excuse me, 500, whatever the difference between 190 and 552. Right. Those two together are used to pay new supplemental payments, and they will be on a quarterly basis ongoing to really build up their payments and their claims up to higher rates, essentially. Does that answer your question?
Right. I just want, It does. I just wanted to make sure that we were clarifying sort of those amounts. The 190 is the tax. The total payments, which is inclusive of that, is that 552.
Yes.
That 972 is for the second year. But those payments are not, it's not like we're taking in general fund dollars. We're not drawing down general fund dollars. Those are payments that are being made to the hospitals. And I wanted to clarify that because I think sometimes when we talk about leaving federal money on the table, which is very often a topic of conversation, which we try not to do too much and to fix it where we can. It's great to draw down those payments. It's great for that, for that money to be here in state, but in most circumstances, we're talking about a drawdown into the state for specific programs or in general fund dollars or specific programs that exist within our state budget. And these are payments that are being made to the hospitals.
Madam Chair, Stacy Weeks for the record. Yes, that is correct. And the same for the Children's Behavioral Health. For the first time ever, Nevada will have an ongoing resource, thanks to the hospitals and the legislature and the governor and everyone for agreeing to use that revenue to support children's behavioral health. So it will not cost the state general fund.
Thank you so much. Members, do we have any other questions for the department? Sounds good. Okay, with that, we will go ahead and entertain a motion to approve agenda items M40, M42, M43, and M44.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And with that, I so move those items as listed.
We have a first from Senator Dondero Loop, a second from Speaker Yeager. Is there any discussion on the motion? With that, those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed to say nay. The motion carries. Thank you so much for being here today. We are now moving on to agenda M75. And M75 is the Department of Public Safety, Office of Traffic Safety, pertains to work program C66950. Please start when you're ready.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Amy Davey. I'm the director of the Nevada Office of Traffic Safety. This work program is fairly standard for us. It seeks to, we're requesting an authority alignment for our federal grant funds. In this particular grant program, it's in our impaired driving program. I'm happy to answer questions.
Senator Titus?
Thank you. All right, great, thank you. I asked this to be pulled because in reviewing for this presentation today, and I looked at what you had submitted, and for those members who are it's in book volume number 4, page 384, and it's what the department submitted. And my concern, and I know this is grant money coming in, and I think it's a good cause. I have great concern with the numbers that you showed us in that statement about a 75% increase in polysubstance fatalities and all of that. So I support this concept, but what caught my interest and I need to clarify is included in your document is this line that says there is a grant match requirement for these funds. And so my question to you is, if you accept this money, if we okay for you to accept this money, what are you going to do, or how are you going to, where are you going to get the grant match funds?
Thank you, Senator Titus, for the question. Through the chair to you, this is Amy Davey with the Office of Traffic Safety. These are our standard funding sources from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. Our grant matching funds are built into our agency budget. They're a very small, the match is a very small component of our budget. Additionally, for these grant funds, we are allowed to use what's called soft match or match, in-kind match. And so frequently the agency will use other forms of match, such as trooper time on the road, costs for vehicles, but typically, we don't have any issues with meeting our match. We get somewhere around $7 to $10 million a year in federal grant funds, and match is always built into that calculation.
And you can use another grant to match for application for this particular grant then? Can you use those, mix those funds up like that?
No. I'm sorry if I misspoke. I apologize, Senator Titus. Amy Davey with the Office of Traffic Safety. We're not matching federal funds with federal funds. We do have a state component in our budget that we use for our overall match. And then we pass through our match requirements to our subrecipients as well. So if we give a grant to a DUI treatment court, they have a match requirement on these funds, and so those two forms of funding will meet our federal match.
And so you are assuring us that if we accept this grant, that you won't have to come back to this committee for additional funds for that match?
Amy Davey, Office of Traffic Safety. Yes, absolutely. The funds are received every year. And the funds actually have, I believe these are 2022 or 2023 funds. So this work program is really for authority. The funds have already been received by the state. And yes, you can take me to the bank on that one.
All right, very good. It was always that fine print that I look out for. So thank you very much for that clarification. And thank you, Madam Chair. And if there's no other questions, I'll move to approve this application.
Sounds good. Do we have a second? Second. I have a first from Senator Titus, a second from Speaker Yeager. Speaker Yeager. We're making sure we have our right people on right side, making motions and second. Is there any discussion on the motion? With that, those in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. The motion carries. Next, we will move on to M84 and invite the Division of Environmental Protection, Industrial Site Cleanup up to the front to present on M84.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Rick Perdomo. I'm a Deputy Administrator with NDEP. With me today is Katie Bradley, Administrative Services Officer for NDEP. And in Las Vegas is James Dotchin, Bureau Chief for Industrial Site Cleanup, and Alan Pineda, a Supervising Professional Engineer in the same Bureau. This work program seeks to receive and eventually expend approximately $31,341,000 for remediation work and response cost expenditure by the division related to the Three Kids Mine project site in Clark County, Nevada. The Three Kids Mine project site is an approximately 1,200-acre federal and non-federal land. It's an abandoned mine site in Clark County, and under a mine remediation reclamation agreement and administrative order on consent, the division and its partner, Pulte and Lakemore, as well as the city of Henderson, seek to clean up the property and eventually redevelop it. The incoming funds, $31,191,000, will be held as financial assurance in cash by the division to ensure remediation work is completed. $150,000 on top of that will be held by the division as a retainer to ensure division response costs are paid. The funds will, the $31,341,000 in financial assurance will be drawn down as the project is completed, as financial assurance is not needed to cover parts of the project that have been remediated. So the idea is that the funds for financial assurance will be eventually drawn down to the point where they'll be near zero. The amount of the financial assurance is based on a current estimate for remediation work at the site, and the $150,000 is based on an estimate of 1 year of division response costs. The $150,000 in division response costs are intended to serve as sort of a replenishing retainer where the division can draw down the money, submit a periodic bill to the responsible party, and receive payment and replenish the $150,000. With that, if there are any questions related to this work program, I will entertain them now.
Thank you so much for your presentation overview. We do have a couple questions. I will first go to Assemblyman Watts.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for that overview. I think you gave a very good description of how this is going to work on the financial side. Could you provide just a high-level overview of the remediation work that's going to be done on the Three Kids Mine site?
Yeah, I'll defer to our experts in the technical area in Las Vegas, JD and Alan, Mr. Dotchin and Mr. Pineda, to take you through that.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the question, Assemblyman Watts. So the plan for the remediation is to take the asbestos and municipal solid waste that's on the surface of the mine site currently and take it to an off-site landfill, and then excavate the mine wastes and impacted soil that's currently on the surface of the site, place it into the 3 open pits that are on the site as well to backfill that, and after that has occurred, the site will be covered with 10 feet of native unimpacted soil to ensure that the health of the public and the environment is protected.
Sir, do you mind stating your name for the record? We know that we have a JD and an Alan, so which one are
Alan
you?
Pineda, for the record.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pineda. That was an excellent job of just enough detail, so I appreciate that. The other question I had is, what, if any, are the consequences if during this process the division determines that Pulte is out of compliance with this agreement or any state, local, or federal laws?
Sure. So the mine remediation reclamation agreement and administrative order on consent has several mechanisms. One is stipulated penalties that we can enforce through noncompliance with the agreement. The agreement also indicates that the division does not waive any of its statutory and regulatory authorities, so that's an avenue for compliance. Also, if they are repeatedly deficient, a work takeover is possible by the division, and that's under paragraph 91 of the agreement, and that's what the financial assurance is there for. If we start a work takeover, then we're starting the process to gain access to the financial assurance, and at that point the division would take the remaining money in the financial assurance and use that to potentially remediate the property, if that makes sense.
Thank you very much for the explanation. It does.
And sir, can you just state your name for the record again?
I'm
Just
so-
because
yeah.
we take minutes.
First time, I apologize. Yeah, it's Rick Perdomo, Deputy Administrator, NDEP.
Sounds good. I appreciate that. We also have a question from Senator Gogochia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And the majority of these lands are federal lands. Will they retain ownership in the end?
So the project came about because of the Three Kids Mine Project Act, which was a congressional act passed in 2014. So the act requires basically the responsible parties now, Lake Moore and Pulte, to satisfy certain conditions, which we think are just about satisfied at this point, to transfer the federal lands over through the city of Henderson, ultimately to the responsible parties. So under the act, once those conditions are met, the mine remediation and reclamation agreement and administrative order on consent is one of those requirements. The federal lands will be patented and will become private lands, if that helps.
Thank you. That's what I thought, but I wanted to get it on the record. Thank you, sir.
And that's Rick Perdomo for the record again. Sorry.
It is not thing. Thank you so much for clarifying that. With that, we have another question from Senator Neal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I had a question on the 10 feet, I guess, of dirt that's going to cover anything that's there. I remember this from my time in the Assembly many moons ago. I don't know, 2013 when it got transferred to the redevelopment area. Is it still going to be a housing or housing contemplated for this area?
That's the intention,
That's
yes.
the question.
Rick Perdomo
Wait
for
a
the
minute.
record.
Okay. No, go ahead.
Rick Perdomo for the record, that's the intention. Eventually, it will be redeveloped into residential use.
So if it's redeveloped into residential use and you're covering up what is potentially hazardous or left over with 10 feet of dirt, what's in normal build, right? You dig a certain amount down and then you have to run pipes, you have to do different things. So talk to me about, number one, how this is manageable for humans and their children who then live there or who will future live there.
Rick Perdomo for the
'Cause
record.
it doesn't sound right.
So the act requires that that basically cleanup. There's actually a standard in the act. The cleanup has to be compliant with all federal, state, and local regulations with respect to exposure risks to human health. So that's one piece of it. The agreement also requires a circular protective cleanup, which also analyzes those exposure risks as well. So, and on top of that, this site has been studied for quite a while now. There is a record of decision which requires a circular protective cleanup, which means acceptable risks to human health. So we're fairly confident at this point that with the amount of studying, the record of the decision, and the remedy that's been selected, which includes 10 feet of cover, that those requirements that are in the act, in federal, state, and local regulation in the agreement will be met.
Follow-up? So, I guess I have one final question. Well, it's really two, because I want to ask about dumping of the material into a landfill. But in terms of water and water access to the Three Kids Mine area for residential, what does the agreement say? Because I was going to the website. What does the agreement say about protecting it and then making sure that the pipes, and if it's affected by any of the mercury or the other pieces, I mean, how are we really protecting the water and then the pipelines that will be built that will transfer the water to human beings? Is that somewhere? Is there a page I can read that will help me understand this? I guess I'm bringing this up because I didn't really like it when we passed it, I think, the legislation on the assembly side, and now it's coming back, and it was going to be a 30-year problem anyway for the remediation. But in my mind, I'm like, does anybody ever come to the conclusion that maybe certain areas just shouldn't be built upon?
On Rick Perdomo for the record, on page 19 of the agreement, there is a section specifically that addresses property requirements and contains sort of access and use limitations and also covenants so that, you know, future users of this land do not essentially dig too deep. So those are all included. There will be institutional controls which prevent basically the exposure risks that I spoke of from becoming basically unacceptable. So there is an entire section of the agreement that deals with limiting potential access to what we would consider remediation work.
Okay. And so, I mean, I'm being facetious, so I guess no one's going to get a pool. I'm sorry. All right, I take that one back. Okay, but, all right, all above ground. All right. But for the landfill piece, how are you making sure that, I mean, you're going to dump hazardous materials into a landfill and then say, because it's a landfill, it's not going to go anywhere else? Like, it's not going to do seepage, it's not going to affect any other area. How are you protecting that?
Rick Perdomo for the record. I'll defer to Alan, Mr. Pineda and Mr. Dotchin in Las Vegas for any technical explanation on that issue.
JD Dotchin for the record, NDP. Your specific question about taking the material on the surface and putting it into the open pits. We've done seepage studies on the material, which shows it does not seep into the soil below where it's going to be impounded. The water is 100 feet or more below the bottom of the pit. And your other question about the piping that would go underneath the homes. So the 10 feet is the base. They're going to add another 2 feet of type 2 to 3 feet of type 2 material. That's where all the piping utilities would live. So that there would not be anywhere near any native soils at all. Your question about the pool, I know you drew it back, but the 10 feet is designed basically to allow your normal resident to do what they want to do in their backyard. Plant trees, put a 6-foot pool in, that's fine. Just not go below that 10 feet, which would get into native, which is perfectly fine, but it's just, we don't have the numbers to back it up that it's safe to be in that area. So we've established, as Rick Perdomo indicated, these institutional controls that would say you can only go so deep in this area. So any utilities or contractors or even the residents couldn't go too deep in your backyard, in your community, for their safety.
Just Madam Chair, just this last point. So I don't know I'm having a flashback of, John Travolta in Civil Action. Awesome movie. Because I'm just trying to figure out who is going to be monitoring and making sure that a contractor doesn't go too deep and then poison a family, right? And I guess this is I'm not even going to continue to say anything, but I have so many deep problems with this, but clearly the cat is out of the fence or whatever people plan on, killing everybody. But I just don't, I just see this as an environmental hazard. Not all land is good land. And maybe there should be a limit to how much you try to advance a particular community for profit, right? I mean, that's, and I'll just put a thumbtack right there. Thank you, Madam Chair, for all the latitude.
Members, do we have any other additional questions for the division? I'm going to circle back just because I know that there's obviously, I'm assuming when Pulte's going in there, after the remedial measures are being done, I would believe, I don't know if there's going to be any additional geotechnical work and testing that would be performed?
JD Dotchin for the record. Yes, we have a geotech report in right now to evaluate that presently, and the NDP will be overseeing this entire project.
Thank you. Members, do we have any additional questions for the presenters? I will go to Assemblywoman Gorlow.
Thank you so much. I just had a quick question, and I apologize if I missed it in the presentation. Is that 10 feet, is that a requirement or a recommendation?
JD Dotchin for the record. That's a requirement in the AOC and documents that we've had that 10 feet of buffer in place.
And if I could
Thank
follow
you.
up real quick. Rick Perdomo
Please
for
do.
the Rick Perdomo for the record. The agreement requires Pulte Lake Moore to submit a remedial design, which is under review by the division and requires approval. So presumably that 10 feet of cover will be in that remedial design, will be approved, and will become enforceable under the administrative order on consent.
Okay, I don't think we have any other questions. I thank you for your presentation. With that, I would seek a motion to approve M84.
So moved.
I have a first from Senator Dondero Loop and a second from Speaker Yeager. Is there any discussion on the motion? Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. Are you a nay? The motion carries. Thank you, and we will now move on to reclass. Oh, I almost forgot. M91. With M91, we will welcome the Office of the Military Division of Emergency Management up to one of the podiums. Great, and feel free to start when you're ready.
Good afternoon, Chair and committee members. Jared Franco, CFO for the Division of Emergency Management and Homeland Security. For the record, I am here to request the aligning of our state authority and our already approved Disaster 4523 COVID federal authority. If passed, this will cut down immensely on the amount of work programs we have to do and allow us to have adequate amount of funding in our accounts to pay our expenses in a timely manner. I appreciate your consideration and will entertain any questions you may have.
Thank you so much. Senator Titus, do you have any questions after their presentation?
Yeah, I do, Madam Chair. Thank you for allowing me to pull this one, and I appreciate your waiting for so long in the day to get this up here. So thank you again. I guess these are monies that have already been spent by different groups, different communities, different folks. How were these monies awarded? Was there a grant process, or can you explain that process? I couldn't find it in your explanation.
Yes, ma'am. Through you, Madam Chair, to Senator Titus. So this funding is only the management and administration of the COVID-19 federal grant. These are the funds that we receive as a division to ensure the proper management and operation of this grant funding. So it goes towards salaries, supplies, and operational costs.
Okay, so this wasn't actually to reimburse any agencies for the money they spent. It was just to reimburse your agency in managing the funds that were then distributed.
Through you, Madam Chair, to Senator Titus, that is correct, ma'am.
And what was the percent then of the cost of managing those funds? How much did the agency actually spend of these funds versus going to the folks that were affected?
Through you, Madam Chair, to Senator Titus, to make sure I'm answering your question correctly, the division received 10% of the overall approved amount that was able to be passed through. And right now, we have the $7 million in authority left of that M&A cost.
Okay, that's what I was getting at. Thank you very much. That's the only question I have. And Madam Chair, again, if there's no one else that has any other questions, I'll move to approve this.
We have a first from Senator Titus, a second from Speaker Yeager. Is there any discussion on the motion? With that, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those that oppose say nay. The motion carries. Thank you, and we will move on to the reclassifications category. And we will invite up the Department of Health and Human Services, Aging and Disability Services Division.
Good afternoon. My name is Jeff Duncan. I'm an agency manager for Aging Disability Services Division. So we have a couple reclasses in front of you from two different budget accounts. The first one is a couple realignments of the classification to align the duties. And then the other budget account is a couple positions that have been extremely hard to fill. And I will happy to answer any questions about that. But we're looking to reclassify those positions to help us with some federal compliance. And we will stand for questions.
We will go ahead and start with Assemblywoman Brown-May.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Duncan. It's great to see you. Thanks for being here. My questions are specific to the Aging and Disability Services Division position reclassifications. Could you just briefly discuss how these requested position reclassifications would benefit the agency if they're approved today?
So thank you for the question. Jeff Duncan for the record. Can you tell me specifically which set? Because we have two different sets, one that's under our quality assurance and one that's under our program. So one is budget account 3266 PCN 2010 and 2014.
Thank you, Mr. Duncan. I appreciate the clarification. I think both of them, in that you're affecting two different budget accounts, and we are really working to streamline, it looks like, what you're doing with an ADSD. So what really is the end implication to those changes?
Great, thank you. So it's Jeff Duncan for the record. I'm not going to have to phone a friend because I brought my friend with me to the table for the first set. So the first one that we'll cover for you is 3278, the three reclassifications, and Ms. LaDawn Knighton will be happy to tell you the benefit to the agency.
Good afternoon. For the record, LaDawn Knighton. I am the Chief of Community Services for ADSD. Thank you for your question. For the first set, those are positions 0316, 0611, and 0612. We are realigning those positions to the series that most fits program development, and that will help us to support our community partners in providing more efficient and effective services. Thank you.
So Jeff Duncan for the record. Excellent job, Ms. Knighton. And I will cover the other budget account, which is a little bit more complicated. And to talk with Senator Neal's comment about many moons ago, we had these two positions transferred to us with our Medicaid waivers. Apologize, I don't remember the year. At that point in time, these two positions were slated to do person-centered planning, and they were nurses. I don't know if you all know, but our nurse positions are extremely hard to fill, and they've remained vacant for a very long time. So as the programs have evolved, we've had some things come up with our quality assurance and some federal compliance, and that's why we're now looking to these two specific positions to reclassify as management analysts to help us with compliance, data collection, et cetera.
Thank you. We will go to Senator Canizero.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think you just mentioned with the last set of reclassifications, there were nurse positions that have been vacant for a very long time. And then I'm not sure about the prior positions, if those have been vacant, if you just need to transition them. Can you kind of explain that piece a bit more for me?
You bet. Thank you for the question. Jeff Duncan for the record. So Ms. Knighton said there are currently humans in those positions. We're just changing the classification series from you might have to phone a friend here. It depends on basically to the social service specialist series, which is more in line with their duties. Then the other two in 3266, these aren't mine, that's why I have to look at my notes. But they are really been vacant since we've had them. I don't believe we've ever had anybody in these positions, and they've went through a lot of changes and other attempts in the interim to do reclassifications, but due to circumstances, we weren't able to. So that's why we're now in front of you asking to go to this management analyst series.
And I think when we're talking about reclassification for positions that have been vacant for quite some time, or saying that we have folks in these positions, but they really align more with these particular job duties, makes sense. But my question is, these both feel like problems and issues that are not new. These other folks who filled these positions really have probably longer than at least the last legislative session, not really filled those job duties and would need some adjustment. These vacant positions have certainly been open since prior to the last legislative session. So why are we seeing reclassifications here in an IFC hearing as opposed to the budget process? Because we typically do reclassifications in the budget process as we're going through agency budgets and looking at all the different positions throughout the state. So can you talk about whether you have looked at that before, been denied, why we're seeing it now when these seem to be not issues that sort of have come up, but issues that have existed?
So thank you for the question. Jeff Duncan again for the record. That's a lot to unpack, so I'm going to break them down in twos. I'm going to go back to Ms. Knighton's. We did attempt to reclassify these positions in the last interim after the last legislative session. Unfortunately, due to timing, we didn't meet some of the benchmarks, and then it was just simply too late to get it into the budget or the agency request. Same thing kind of for the other two positions under 3266, except for the longer history I can't really speak to of how many times they've been through this and that, but the same thing happened that we just tried to do in the interim, then didn't make the agency request budget, and ultimately here we are in front of you now to do it.
Okay. And I appreciate that as an explanation. I will say I don't think what you're asking for today makes a lot of sense. I think the hesitation is that this really feels like something that should be done during the budgeting process, not necessarily before IFC, although it can be. And so I think we should all just be cautious that this is not something that should sort of spill into, now this is just what we're going to do in the middle of the interim as agencies are starting to develop budgets for the next biennium and starting to submit those. And that really should be a focus, not just for y'all, but for every agency, of something that we're seeing in a legislative session so that we can appropriately make sure we've got state positions where we need them, they're doing the things they need to be doing, and that we're funding them appropriately. So that's just sort of my larger concern, but I don't have a specific concern, and what you're saying kind of makes sense. And I think with the idea that you've been trying to do this for a while and just now is sort of the time that you're meeting those marks, I don't, Madam Chair, have concerns about this particular item. Just sort of overall, I'm going to be very cautious about seeing a bunch of reclassifications starting to spill over into the interim.
Thank you. Members, do we have any other questions for the division? With that, I would entertain a motion to approve the reclassifications listed under the Aging and Disability Services Division.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. So moved.
I have a first from Senator Dondero Loop, a second from Speaker Yeager. Is there any discussion on the motion? With that, those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. The motion carries. We'll go ahead and invite up the Department of Health and Human Services, Division of Welfare and Supportive Services, to discuss their request for positions to be reclassified.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. Robert Thompson, for the record, Administrator for the Division of Welfare and Supportive Services. I have with me today Deputy Administrator Kelly Cantrell, who is the Deputy over our Energy Assistance Program, and Chief Maria Wortman-Meschberger, who is our chief over the Energy Assistance Program. We have for you today a request to reclassify 22 of our Energy Assistance Program positions. And to give you a little background on why we're here today is our Energy Assistance Program has historically been case managed by Administrative Assistant 4s, which are grade 29 positions. Their job classification allows them to conduct eligibility for a simple one eligibility program. In July of 2023, a classification study was completed for our family services specialists. Our family services specialists are the case managers that do case management for the majority of our agency, our food stamps, Medicaid, and TANF programs. In that job classification study, we were brought forward from DHRM an approval and a change for the family services specialist positions that specifically indicated family services specialist ones are appropriate for the simple programs of a singular program, for example, the Energy Assistance Program. That triggered the need to reclassify our Energy Assistance Administrative Assistants 4 to Family Service Specialist 1s. When we look at that team as a whole, our Family Service Specialist 1s would then be supervised by program officers, which is how it has always been set up since that program came into existence as formal state employees. But program officer 1s are not appropriate in the job classifications to supervise family service specialists. It should be family service specialist supervisors, which was all triggered by the job classification study for family services specialist on the other side of the house in July of 23. So that is the background of how we got here today outside of session, and we are ready for any questions.
We do have a question from one of our members. I will turn it over to Senator Neal.
Thank you, and thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mr. Thompson. So I appreciate the explanation about the energy, I guess the specialists becoming family service specialist 1s, but what happens with the existing, how do the reclassifications affect the Energy Assistance Program if it's approved?
Robert Thompson, for the record, there would be no negative impact. The positions that are currently filled are grade 29 and they would transition to grade 29. They do meet the minimum qualifications, so there would be no negative impact in the employee. The positive impact is that we would then have the ability to utilize family service specialists in other programs should the Energy Assistance Program become backlogged or have more vacancies than they're able to handle. That position only has 20 case managers. So when there's high turnover or quick turnover for promotion, it's hard for them to handle it. And this change aligning those job classifications would free up Deputy Cantrell to have temporary movement when needed.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Members, do we have any additional questions for the division? We will go to Majority Leader Canizero.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I have some similar questions. This, I guess, is coming from a job classification study you mentioned. And so when did you have that study that recommended kind of changing this classification? What's the timeline for that, and then you bringing this to us?
Robert Thompson, for the record. Madam Chair, through you, the job classification study was employee initiated. It was not initiated by the agency. If I recall right, that Request went in either March or May of 2023, and we received the final outcome after all of the budget sessions closed in July of 23.
And so why not wait and put this in with your budget in for this next biennium?
Robert Thompson, for the record, the job specs were re-announced and republished in July of 2023 by the Division of Human Resource Management that is showing our employees that they are in the wrong job classifications.
Now I think I might have a different question. Why would the job specs, if we've not approved a reclassification, not match the job as currently being occupied? Like, why would DHRM post something that doesn't match the job that these folks were hired ostensibly under the same classification and specifications?
Robert Thompson, for the record. The Energy Assistance Program in Budget Account 4862 has approximately 22 employees. They have not historically had family service specialists in that position or in that unit, in that budget. The job classification study that was done was for my employees that are in Budget Account 3233 for family services specialists. The family services specialist ones used to come in at grade 28, and after 1 year, they auto-progress to grade 31 as paraprofessional employees. When the job classification study was done for family service specialists in the food stamp, Medicaid, and TANF positions, the job classification study specifically indicated that singular programs such as energy assistance should be family services specialist ones. So it wasn't the energy assistance program that caused this job classification study. It was the food stamp, TANF, and Medicaid program that was reclassified. It was a secondary impact that bled over into Budget Account 4862 that is now published, and now they're showing our staff that they are in the wrong budget categories. There are positive impacts to this that allow the deputy and the chief to share those positions differently during vacancies, and it would be a positive move to be able to do this, but it was the job classification study in a different program that caused the necessity for us to come forward today.
No, that makes sense. I guess I'm just a little confused as to how DHRM is posting some of these things that is now causing some discrepancies among the folks who are working for you. That to me just doesn't make a lot of sense. And I understand we have tons of job classification studies, either employee initiated or that might be done within a particular department. I think we just authorized one last session for kind of state workers overall to take a better look at some of these things. And so that's, again, this is typically something that is done within the budgeting process. I'm not going to hold this particular item up today, Madam Chair, but I'm going to note that I have some concerns about seeing now two separate requests for reclassifications, some based on a study, which happens, and then we see those things as we come into a legislative session. We had some of those discussions over folks who said, we have done this study, we've looked at our positions, we think these folks should be reclassified, and then the legislature in its budgeting process says yes or no. So I appreciate you answering all of my questions. And again, Madam Chair, I won't hold this up today, but I definitely am concerned about seeing some things that I think should be part of our larger budget discussions, especially because we did have that conversation last session about kind of looking at the state workers as a whole in all these different departments to make sure that folks were kind of where they were supposed to be. So I just will remain vigilant if we see additional ones of these in future IFCs, and hope that the rest of the agencies, even if there are studies going on or different things that are found, that we're sort of seeing that as part of the whole budget process and not, again, in the interim. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Members, do we have any other questions or comments regarding these reclassifications? With that, I would entertain a motion to approve the reclassifications of positions listed under the Division of Welfare and Supportive Services Energy Assistant Program.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. So moved.
I have a first from Senator Dondero Loop, a second from Speaker Yeager. Is there any discussion on the motion? With that, those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. The motion carries. We are now on to P, agenda item P1, and we will go ahead and invite the Department of Administration State Public Works Division up.
Matthew Tuma, Deputy Director for the Department of Administration. Before I introduce item P1, I do want to introduce Mr. Will Lewis, who is with you in the Las Vegas location. This is his first interim finance committee as the State Public Works Division Administrator. And so since we're kind of at most of these meetings and go through the legislative process, I would like to just introduce him to all of you as you interact with him going forward. And then moving on to item P, P1, it's a request to transfer $1,070,000 from CIP project 23C36, improvements for buildings purchased in Las Vegas, to fund an additional property purchase under CIP project 23C35. And so this would be the acquisition of some additional parking spaces, 74 parking spots that would be at a cost that's equivalent to what the state has paid for additional parking locations at that same site. I'm available for any questions, and so are the folks from Public Works.
Thank you so much, Mr. Tuma. If you can go ahead and talk about the other two CIP improvements, that'd be great too. Never mind, please disregard that. With this, I will go ahead and open up questions, and we have a question from Senator Neal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So my question is could you provide an update on the completed building, the tenant improvements as the agency moves to the new state office buildings in Las Vegas, and as well confirm that if the transfer of the $1.7 million from CIP project 23-C36 to CIP project 23C35, if it's approved, is it going to be sufficient funding that would be available in the project budget to fund the remaining planned building and improvements?
Matthew Tuma, Deputy Director for the Department of Administration. So first, yes, project 23C36 will still have sufficient funding for tenant improvements at the acquired properties. As far as providing an update, I know we've provided some of that information to legislative fiscal staff, and we can kind of submit the most updated copy of what has been committed and what's under contract, that we can follow up with that information. We also provide those updated numbers and updated information on the quarterly reports for both of these projects that we submit to LCB fiscal staff and to the Interim Finance Committee.
Thank you.
Thank you. And for purposes of saving us some time, Deputy Director Tuma, if you don't mind also going in and covering P3, because P2 was withdrawn, and P4, which we would also hear with L1.
That sounds good. So P3 is a request to accept and expend an additional $433,024 in federal grant funds from the Office of the Military for CIP Project 21-C07. The construction organization parking Washoe County Armory. And so I am now open for any questions for P3 on receiving the additional funding for that project.
Members, do we have any questions for P3? I don't see any. If you want to go ahead on to P4 and L, that'd be great.
Yes. So for P4, I would invite the Nevada Department of Wildlife to come join us up at the table as it relates to L1, which is their item, and it relates to S3, which is an informational item on the exception reports for this project. So I'll turn it over to the director here to do the introduction as the driver here.
Good afternoon. For the record, Alan Janae, Director, Nevada Department of Wildlife. So as mentioned, as we're here to talk about L1, which is looking to transfer $1.5 million from the Lost Revenue Reserve. Wow, it's late in the day. To support the Cave Creek Dam rehabilitation, the CIP project 21C04. That would be the initial ask, and then that would then be allocated to the agenda item P4, which would be the use of that 1.5 million for the use in that Cave Creek Dam in the CIP project 21C04. If you have any questions, I stand for those now.
Perfect. Members, do we have any questions for the presenter regarding P4 and L? I don't. Oh, I have one up there, Senator Titus.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the opportunity to ask a question. Again, I know that it's been a long day. We've been hearing about this Cave Creek Dam construction or reconstruction or rehabilitation for quite a while now. The last time I asked, that it hadn't even gone out to bid yet. You were looking at somebody to do this dam. Director, I just want to know that this project is going to finally move forward.
Thank you for the comment, and I am happy to be the guy that can tell you that this project's approximately 75% complete. Basically, the contractor's in a seasonal hold just because of the weather, but there is an anticipated completion date of July of this year.
So I might look at taking my fly rod up there maybe in the near future?
It depends on how we can recover the pool behind the dam, which is beyond my control. I wish I could say yes, but hopefully by maybe summer of next year.
All kidding set aside, I do appreciate that this has been a long effort for you to get this done, this project done, and I'm looking forward to coming and visiting it again, and because it is a beautiful area. So thank you for sticking with this project and finally moving forward with it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, gentlemen, for your presentation. I can't help it, Mr. Lewis. Is there anything you want to put on the record today?
I am humbled. I am appreciative. I served as the Director of Planning and Design at the College of Southern Nevada for 10 years and came over to Public Works, was not expecting this blessing, and I've been serving now as of January 9th. So I'm humble, appreciative, and thank you guys for the opportunity to serve.
Well, welcome to IFC, and I'm sure you have a lot of fun projects that you're going to be working on. So with that, we're going to, the motion that we're going to make to approve these items would be to approve agenda item P1, P3, P4, and L1.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and I would move to approve P1, P3, P4, and L1.
I have a first from Senator Don Darrell Loop, a second from Speaker Yeager. Is there any discussion on the motion? With that, those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Those opposed say nay, and the motion carries. We are now moving along to agenda item Q, which is the request for transfer from the Interim Finance Committee account for the Foreclosure Mediation Assistance Program pursuant to NRS 107.080.
Good afternoon, Chair. Thank you very much. Perry Fagan, Deputy Director with Business and Industry and President for the Board of Home Means Nevada, Inc. Today I'm here to turn around and request funding of $83,146 to the program to continue its operation and take care of its funding for the hopefully for at least a few more months. If you don't mind, I just want to give you an update because I know there may be some questions and have been in the past. I know that this will certainly bring the amount that's left in the account down considerably. As you know, foreclosures in the state of Nevada have gone down, which is a good thing. Notices of default are the primary funding source for this program. We are currently running behind where we were last year, and I would anticipate that we'll probably get to about maybe around 3,000 again. So we're running kind of flat at the moment, but we're about 150 to 200 notices below where we were last year. So the funding mechanism is going to continue to struggle. As you know, we came back in June of this last year and requested contingency funds. The program does not have any other options as it is the budget account is owned by the legislature. We don't have a whole lot of options with regard to the funding sources and changes to that unless the legislature decides to make some changes there. But I'm happy to answer any questions. I certainly have some numbers available with regard to where we are at from the standpoint of mediations year to date. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Thank you so much. Members, do we have any questions for Mr. Fagan? It doesn't look like it. It seems like you were quite prepared for today, so we appreciate that. With it, item Q is an action item that we will have to have a motion to approve the transfer of the $83,146 to the Home Means Nevada account.
So moved.
I have a first from Senator Don Darrell Loop, a second from Speaker Yeager. Is there any discussion on the motion? With that, those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The motion carries. Thank you so much, Mr. Fagan.
Thank you very much.
Next, we'll move on to agenda item R, which is for informational purposes only, and we'll invite the Department of Business and Industry, the Housing Division, up.
Good afternoon, Chair, members of the committee. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to discuss housing here. With me today, for the record, Steve Acroth, Administrator of the Nevada Housing Division. With me today is Christine Hess, our Chief Financial Officer. Going over the Home Means Nevada initiative, not to be confused with the previous agenda item. This is the $500 million use of SLFRF. For the development, preservation, and advancement of affordable housing in the state. Hopefully you received an updated spreadsheet dated the end of January, 1/31/24. There's a couple of additions that I want to point out to what you typically would see on that spreadsheet. And really it goes back to what we heard earlier from the committee in regards to the obligation expenditures and making sure that we actually meet the timelines established by SLFRF. So I really want to focus on the projects on the spreadsheet that are indicated in yellow, where it says discussions ongoing. That's fairly ambiguous. And so what we did was we reached out to those developers and those projects that are indicated in yellow and required our awardees to respond to obligation and expenditure deadlines. And so that's what you'll see now on page 4 and 5 of the spreadsheet. As many of you are well aware, there's layered financing involved in these projects. They're fairly complex, but I can sit here today and say we feel incredibly confident that the entirety of the money will be obligated and expended within the timelines. And with that, we'll be more than happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Director Egcroft. Is there anyone that has any questions regarding the information provided by the Division of Housing? It doesn't look like there's any questions today. We thank you for your presentation, and we will go ahead and move from agenda item R to agenda items and under S, and we will start with S1A and invite the Office of the Governor's Office of Finance up for the quarterly report on the Core.NV Enterprise Resource Planning Project.
Thank you. For the record, I'm Brian Bowles, Administrator of the Office of Project Management, currently engaged in implementing the Core NV project for the state of Nevada. Excuse me. This quarterly status report that OPM and the executive committee that governs our behavior has been presented to you for the reporting period covering July 1st, 2023 to September 30th, 2023. You have that report in front of you, and instead of reading that all into the record at this point, I'll just give you a few highlights, and then I think the questions are going to be the meat of this particular informational item. And so in respect for everybody's time, I'll try to get through this a little bit quickly. For that, for the reporting period covering July 1st to September 30th, the two big highlights of what OPM and the Core NV project was engaged in was first the solicitation and purchasing vehicle to find a new vendor and to find a new product. We engaged with the assistance of our executive committee and the purchasing division into a novel procurement vehicle called an Invitation to Negotiate, or ITN process, wherein we received 7 proposals from prospective vendors, scored those, and we're happy to award eventually CGI Technology and Solutions Incorporated with the contract for the Core NV implementation. That contract was approved at the BOE in September, and we began immediately into working with our new vendor towards implementing this project. Excuse me. The other big highlight of this reporting period was the rollback from the SAP solution that was implemented partially by the Smart 21 project and going back to our legacy systems. That rollback included revitalizing those particular solutions so that the state could continue operations, as well as keeping the success factors and other elements of the SAP product live so that we could do a data extraction to get all of the state's data out and back into our hands. That process took quite a long time and was the majority of our work throughout this reporting period. With respect to the IFC and the body performing, I will stand for any questions at this point because I know you probably have a few.
I appreciate your overview, and I was also talking, so I hope I didn't miss it, but I just wanted to find out whether the program is still on track to meet the projected go live dates.
Thank you for the question, Madam Chair. And yes, as of today, we are on schedule and under budget.
I like to hear that. With that, any members, do we have any other additional questions regarding the Core NV? It doesn't look like that. Thank you so much. This was just for informational purposes, and thank you for sitting here. It's been a long day. We appreciate you. Next, we actually, and were you also covering, I'm so sorry, come back, just one question, I wanted to follow up. Are you also covering the part for the state controller's office as well?
This is Brian Bowles, Administrator for OPM for the record. Are you referring to the Tyler Technologies contract, ma'am?
I am.
So yes, OPM has been working with the controller's office to basically replace the openNV.gov website. The reason that OPM is involved in this is first from a funding perspective, as well as modernizing this particular website and outlet for the state of Nevada to make sure that it integrates correctly with the new ERP system that we are in the process of producing. And we have been engaged in work through this reporting period to contract and begin work in collaboration with the SCO and the Office of the Chief Information Officer for this work. And I believe that the Governor's Office will be handling any future releases of information about that as the work has been ongoing since this reporting period.
Thank you, I appreciate that. One question I had on this one was how the solution aligns with the intent of the procuring a minimum viable solution for the state's core financial and human resource systems.
Thank you for the question, Madam Chair. Again, Brian Bowles, OPM Administrator. Are you referring to the Tyler Technologies contract or how our methodology is going forward for the first part of Core NV?
Oh, no, with respect to the Tyler Technologies work.
Certainly. Thank you for the question, Madam Chair. Yes, there is a statutory requirement that the state provide this transparency of all of our financial information to the citizens of the state of Nevada. And that is a critical part of the integration piece for the ERP. And the modernization of this particular website was necessary due to the increase and advancement of the technology of the ERP. And it was something that we could tackle early as opposed to later.
And just for a layperson like myself, like I know when you go on transparent or open.nv.gov, it's pretty easy to type in information to pull the data. Is there going to be more like release of information with using this Tyler Technologies, or is it still going to be limited and protected of information?
Thank you for the question, Madam Chair. Again, Brian Bowles, OPM Administrator for the record. I'm awaiting my final demonstration for next Monday so that I can see that for myself, to be honest. But from what I hear, the PII and all of the sensitive information will still be protected, but I believe there will be an increased amount of information available on this new upgraded site.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that, making sure that that sensitive information is still protected and that you guys are looking out for that. With that, thank you. I just wanted to make sure once you ran off, I realized we had another portion of that Core NV update, so thank you for coming back. With that, this is a non-action item. We will move on. We've already completed S4 on our agenda. We are moving on to T1. And we will invite the Office of the Governor up or regarding the COVID-19 relief program, or whoever will be presenting on that. I have a feeling it's going to be individuals at EDON.
Madam Chair, may we proceed?
Please do.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of the committee. For the record, Brian Sandoval, President of the University of Nevada, Reno. With me is the Director of University Center for Economic Development, Mr. Fred Steinman, as well as the CEO of the Economic Development Authority of Western Nevada, Mr. Taylor Adams. And again, Madam Chair, we are grateful that we're on the agenda today. I'm going to truncate my remarks because I understand and appreciate that it is very late in the day. You are likely aware, Madam Chair, that there is a Tech Hubs program which was presented and proposed by the Biden administration, which was authorized by the Bipartisan CHIPS Act, and that the goal was to invest directly in high-potential U.S. regions and aims to transform them into globally competitive innovation centers. And as you also know, Nevada is very blessed that we are a global leader in the lithium economy, and in that we're very unique in that we have the lithium resource, we have the ability to process it, we have the ability to make it a part of the advanced manufacturing process, and then we have the ability to take it and put it back into and recycle it and put it back into the advanced manufacturing process. So the Biden administration, the Department of Commerce, sought out applications to be designated a tech hub. And we put together a consortium of over 60 Nevada entities, including economic development authorities, counties, municipalities, private business, universities, community colleges, all of which reside in every county in the state of Nevada. So it is indeed a statewide effort along with the tribes throughout the state of Nevada. Nationwide, there were 489 applications to receive that designation. It was extremely competitive. And only 31 applicants were selected to become a tech hub. And thankfully, we were selected as one of those 31. And that's where we stand today. That is phase one. Phase two is the opportunity as a tech hub to seek a grant of $75 million to help fund the tech hub and its efforts. That application is due at the end of this month. The purpose or reason for us being here today is that a condition of that application is that there be a 10% match for the $75 million. So we're excited about this opportunity for the state. At least in my experience, I don't recall ever having an opportunity like this to really position ourselves as truly a global leader in an industry that is very important to the future of the United States of America and this state. So with that, Madam Chair, to provide even more details, I'll turn it over to Mr. Steinman. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. For the record, Fred Steinman, University of Nevada, Reno, Chair and committee members. As President Sandoval pointed out, this really does represent a once-in-a-generational opportunity to continue to support the growth of an emerging industry sector that we hope will drive economic growth for the state of Nevada for the next 100 years. We will be aggressive in our efforts to support business creation, attraction, retention, and expansion efforts with the goal of creating 3,000 new businesses, expanding 2,000 existing businesses, and creating 50,000 new direct and indirect jobs throughout the state of Nevada over the next 5 years. The Phase 2 Notice of Funding opportunity does require that our application address critical community concerns regarding infrastructure, community capacity, and housing, as well as working with various Native American, tribal, and indigenous populations throughout the state and under other underserved populations. And working again with our 60-plus consortium members, which span the private sector, public sector, and nonprofit and community-based organizations. We've developed 6 comprehensive projects that I feel, as the principal investigator of this grant, address those concerns and not only support economic development and growth and diversification throughout the state that is consistent with the state's plan for economic development, but also will significantly contribute to national security. Thank you.
Madam Chair, for the record, Taylor Adams, Economic Development Authority of Western Nevada. So nice to be with you all for the first time today. And I think President Sandoval and Dr. Steinman covered everything as well as I possibly could. I'll simply add that this is, again, a statewide initiative. It impacts all of the economic development offices in the state, both north and south, and also provides incredible opportunity in both in workforce training in both our universities and community colleges. And finally, we just say, as President Sandoval said, this differentiates all of Nevada from any other community in our country and possibly the world. Thank you.
Congratulations on receiving that grant from that application. It seemed like it was really competitive. Less than 10% were awarded. Members, do you have any questions for the speakers? We'll start with Speaker Yeager.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple of questions on the process. So obviously going from 489 to 31 is very impressive. And then I heard you say we need to put up the $7.5 million as a 10% matching for a potential $75 million grant. Do you have any idea how many of the 31 who remain in contention will be receiving the $75 million grant from the federal government?
Fred Steinman for the record. Out of the 31 designated tech hubs that are competing in Phase 2, the U.S. Economic Development Administration has indicated about 8 will receive funding out of that 31.
Thank you for that information. And then just a question. Obviously, we're hopeful that we're going to be one of those 8. And so, then there'll be $75 million. But if we're not one of those 8 who are selected, would you still need the $7.5 million? And I guess what would your intent be at that point? Can you still use that for some kind of modified project related to the tech hub?
Madam Chair, through you, Taylor Adams, Economic Development Authority of Western Nevada, for the record. Yes, we would seek to utilize those funds to begin this work. The work that Mr. Steinman's done contemplates 6 individual projects that benefit the entire state. The first of those projects, which is the initiating action that would really get our tech hub moving, can be funded for we believe 2 years with this funding. And as you all know, that takes us right to the end of 2026, which is an important time horizon. So we would ask that we would have the ability to begin this work. Mr. Steinman could perhaps add some on the other programs we could pursue.
Thank you, Taylor. Again, Fred Steinman for the record. Very quickly, it's also important to keep in mind that we are a designated regional technology and innovation hub. And regardless of what happens in Phase 2, that tech hub designation will stay in place. Because of that designation, there are expectations from the Department of Commerce and the Economic Development Administration that we do something with the tech hub. And of course, as the CEO of EDON indicated, in the interim, what we would do is essentially pare down to focus primarily on our supply chain enhancement efforts, again, consistent with the underlying expectations of the Phase 2 Notice of Funding Opportunity. But other federal agencies like U.S. Department of Agriculture, Rural Development, Housing and Urban Development, Small Business Administration, other federal agencies are currently in the process of standing up and funding other federal funding programs that only regional technology hubs can access. So the $7.5 million would allow us to essentially put wins on the board early and allow us the time to aggressively go after those other federal funding programs that are currently being stood up. But they just simply don't exist yet, and funding announcements for them have not been released.
I had a follow-up with respect to the questions that have been asked. When will you know if you are one of the 8 selected?
Fred Steinman for the record. Economic Development Administration hasn't given us an exact date of when Phase 2 awards will be announced. They have kind of indicated that they will do that probably in late summer, July, August, September. Does have to be before October 1, 2024, as that is the start of the Phase 2 implementation phase, the beginning of that federal fiscal year. So hopefully sometime in late summer of this year.
Thank you. Is it possible we're going to ask that you report back to us, should we approve these funds, as to how Phase 1 is going? And obviously, we'd want to be kept in the loop if you are awarded one of the 8 of the applicants. Members, do we have any other additional questions for the presenters?
Madam Chair.
Okay. Okay, let me start with, I'll go up north, Senator Severs-Gansert.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to thank the university and EDON for being here today and for your patience and for the work that you've done. I think being able to get the Tech Hub determination was huge. That's just, 31 out of 400 plus applications. So I appreciate the work that you've done. And I also trust that you're going to be able to use this money as matching for this grant potentially, but maybe others, depending upon, how this all works out. And I think there will be opportunities. I also understand that these funds will be obligated per the federal government requirements for ARPA, once it's given to EDON on behalf of this project or other projects moving forward. I just wanted to confirm that, so that those dollars would be considered obligated. Thank you.
Madam Chair, through you, Taylor Adams from the Economic Development Authority of Western Nevada. To the Senator, yes, that's correct.
Thank you. Let me go to Majority Leader Canizero.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I think Senator Severs-Gansert sort of asked the same question. I know we had discussed just whether or not this qualifies under those ARPA guidelines, because I know we are trying to expend a lot of those dollars. So I'll just end with a brief comment that it's just always so exciting to me when we get to be part of discussions where we're talking about Nevada being able to lead the way and to be in a position where we're one of just a handful of finalists for what I think could be a really great opportunity. And so I'm excited and excited to hear kind of how this all continues, and got my fingers crossed that we'll end up in as the final awardee. And of course, I would be remiss if I didn't also acknowledge that I always love having the University of Nevada, Reno in the house. Go Pack! And that's what I'm going to end with. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I'll turn it over to Senator Dondero-Luke.
Thank you very much. Because the rebels always go after the pack because they're the winners. So my question is about my mighty rebels, and I would like to know how we are going to have some assurance that we're working together across the state, President, not just, we keep calling it the Western Tech Hub, we keep talking about Western Nevada, and while I appreciate that, we are all Nevada, and that 75 million comes to us, and that 7.5 million comes from the Nevada Bank, if you will, not just the UNR Bank. So can you give me some assurances on that and some information? Thank you.
Madam Chair, for the record, Brian Sandoval, President of the University of Nevada, to the Vice Chair, and I appreciate the question. And as you recall, it was probably about 9:30ish that Mr. Andrew Woods from UNLV did testify in support of this matter, and we are working with UNLV. President Whitfield and I have an expression, #BetterTogether, and we intend and will work together with UNLV. This is a statewide initiative, and this will be something that puts the entire state on the map. I'm sure Mr. Steinman or Dr. Steinman has some more specifics as well.
Thank you. For the record, Fred Steinman. Just to confirm, the University Center for Economic Development at UNR and the Center for Business and Economic Research at the Lee Business School at UNLV have worked together over the decades on a number of joint programs and initiatives with statewide impact. Currently, we're just finalizing our budgets that we hope to submit to EDA before February 29th. Currently, we've allocated $3 million over 5 years specifically to the Center for Business and Economic Research at UNLV, as Director Woods at CBER has agreed to essentially oversee and run all the metric and supply chain data and employment data that we have to collect and report to EDA every 6 months. We're also looking forward to providing that data to all the other NG campuses campuses, especially the community colleges, to further support their workforce development efforts, as well as other state agencies, including the Office of Workforce Innovation. So not only is this an NSHE, Nevada System of Higher Education-wide program, but it really is a statewide initiative involving all 17 counties.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate that. And I would echo that we would love to have a report back on if we should approve this, knowing that we are very hopeful that we will get this award, but if we shouldn't, I would want to be sure that the $7.5 million is being used, what we're allocating or what we vote for. So thank you very much, and thank you for your information. And rebels.
Members, do we have any other questions? I don't think we have any further questions. I thank you guys for your presentation. With that, I would entertain a motion to approve item T1 along with a couple reports. We would ask for an update at our June IFC as to how phase one and the use of the $7.5 million is going. And then I'm hoping you guys are the awardee and we have you back for another report at our October IFC to see what the plans are going to be for the money that is ultimately awarded.
I'll make that motion.
Okay.
Smile on my face.
It's getting late. We have a lot of chatty people up here. So I have a first from Minority Leader O'Neill and a second from Majority Leader Canizero. With that, members, do we have any questions regarding the motion? Doesn't look like it. Those in favor say aye.
Aye. Go Pat.
Those opposed? Those opposed say nay. Okay, the motion carries. We'll go ahead and thank you all for waiting all afternoon. I know it's been a long day. We will move on to agenda item T2. And it's under the Office of the Governor, but I'm assuming we probably have someone here to discuss the content management system.
Two and three.
Oh, two. We can combine 2 and 3.
Good afternoon. For the record, Timothy Galuzzi, State Chief Information Officer, Office of the Chief Information Officer within the Office of the Governor. I'm here today with my team to answer any questions you may have regarding this work program or these work programs. First, if it pleases the chair, I'd like to provide a bit of an overview on this effort, the critical nature of this investment, and the time sensitivity.
Definitely. On these T items, we would definitely ask for an overview as we just got these. So any overview is very insightful. Thank you.
Absolutely. Once again, Timothy Galuzzi, State CIO for the record. What is a content management system? A content management system is the platform used to host websites and the digital media accessible through the web platform. The current content management system, Ectron, has been in service for over a decade, with the first websites being launched in 2013. Since then, it has grown to house over 120 agency websites with over 250,000 documents, web pages, and media files. Our singular focus in state government is to provide the service to Nevadans when they need it. Often, our state websites are the first places that Nevadans turn to when they need our assistance. This is where they go to access information, to apply for services, and to seek help. Additionally, we have a duty to provide reliable and equitable communication and access to services to all Nevadans. That is why over the past few biennia, our office has built a program for ADA compliance and remediation. When this initiative kicked off, the CIO at the time reported that our content, with our current staffing levels, it would take approximately 20 years to remediate all of the documents housed in the state's environment. As I reported to this body just this last session, we have made remarkable progress through the hard work of not only our web team, but teams across the state. Why do I bring this up? The first step in solving a problem is being able to identify it. As I mentioned, the state content management platform houses approximately 120 agency websites. There are at least 70 agency websites that are external to the state platform for a variety of reasons. The only way we were able to tackle the ADA issues was through the uniform deployment of tools across all websites and content hosted in the environment. The numbers speak for themselves. Of the state websites that are deemed compliant, we deem compliance as a score of 90 out of 100. 95% of the sites hosted within our environment are compliant, versus 25 of the sites outside reaching a level of compliance. Of note, this effort has drastically lowered the risk of potential litigation for the compliant websites. Knowing what we have is the first step, not only in ADA remediation work, but also in cybersecurity. We cannot protect what we cannot see. Today, I cannot confidently describe to you the security posture of the websites that are outside of the Ectron environment. I cannot tell you which platform these websites are hosted, if they are current on patching, if they are being scanned for vulnerabilities, nor that the baseline security measures are implemented. I can take people's word for it. I can hope. I can have faith, but I would rather be able to scan and see the data myself. State websites are not just a vehicle for posting pictures and press releases. They are often the portal for applications and forms. These sites process and handle sensitive information that constituents have entrusted us to protect. We have a shared responsibility to them to secure the information to the highest level possible. The most common reasons we hear from agencies that choose to host outside of our environment is that the current platform lacks the functionality, user-friendly interface, features, or design that they require to serve their constituencies. Unfortunately, with the current platform, which is over a decade old, I must agree with them. For this to work, we need to have a state web platform that can meet modern business needs. We need a state web platform that can continue to stay relevant, not only in the features and functionality, but responsiveness to the constantly evolving cybersecurity landscape. Not only do we have a shared responsibility for the security of constituent data, we also share responsibility for the most efficient use of taxpayer dollars, like network, server hosting, telephone, and security services. A content management system or web platform is a foundational piece of enterprise technology due to the ability to rapidly leverage economies of scale. Collaboration on a state-hosted solution would reduce the per website cost statewide by leveraging our collective buying power. Now is the time for this to move forward. The Ectron platform in the state is no longer being supported by the vendor. I cannot go into specifics in this forum due to NRS 242.105 sub 1B, but what I can tell you that our time is incredibly limited. With each month that passes us by, the risk to the state platform only grows. This is only compounded by the unknown risk that we are currently accepting with the sites outside of the state-hosted environment. Thank you for your time and consideration. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have. And I also brought some support with me if we get into technical details.
Thank you so much for the presentation. Members, do we have any questions for Mr. Galuzzi? I actually have a question. I just watching all of our technology updates from session and everything. I know 2.5 million is a lot of money, but are there any guarantees that this will be adequate to cover your requested need?
Thank you for the question. Chair, once again, Timothy Galuzzi, State CIO for the record. We purposefully went with a conservative estimate because of the funding source. We wanted to ensure that we can get this amount of funding obligated in the quickest path forward and get it out the door to get the state a platform that can serve all state agencies. We heard you in agenda item K2. So this is a conservative estimate, so we know that we can get these funds obligated, we can get this project off the deck, and we can deliver.
Okay, I just want to clarify, because now you're saying off the deck. I mean, is this just a starting point and we're going to be getting a request during the interim for a lot more money? I just want to kind of see where we're at. I just noticed that during session, technology is quite expensive, and I just want to make sure that we're able to complete the project for within, like I'm trying to, is it conservative that we're providing the 2.5 because it's on the low end, or it's conservative because it's going to ensure that it's going to pay for the technology that you're seeking?
Thank you for the question, Madam Chair. Once again, Timothy Galuzzi, State CIO, for the record. It's conservative based off of the estimates that we got. Now, we haven't stopped this effort. This effort has been ongoing for the planning and solution discovery for this. We've already conducted a request for information, which we got dozens of responses back. And so, you know, being good stewards of taxpayer dollars, we're not going to go out and buy a Cadillac when a Toyota will do just fine for the state. And so, you know, it's conservative to the point where we know that this is enough to get the project going. What we are seeing in this environment is that these platforms have moved to a OpEx model versus a CapEx model. And so we're seeing a lot more subscription-based in these commercial off-the-shelf type solutions. So there would be an ongoing maintenance and licensing and hosting cost that we would see in future biennia that we would address during the budget build.
And do you have an idea or an estimate what that ongoing maintenance and license cost will be to the state?
Thank you for the question, Madam Chair. Once again, Timothy Galuzzi, State CIO. Our estimates right now are approximately $500,000 per fiscal year.
Okay, thank you. Members, does anyone have any other questions for Mr. Galuzzi? I don't hear anyone popping in. With that, anyone want to make a motion to approve items T2 and T3?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I will move to approve T2, T1, and T3.
T2 and 3.
T2 and T3, thank you.
Thank you so much, Senator Daldera Loop for the first and Speaker Yeager for the second. With that, are there any questions regarding the motion? Okay. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. The motion carries. Thank you so much, Mr. Galuzzi. We'll now move on to items. We're going to hear items T4 and T5 together, and this is likely, we're going to invite the Office of Military Division of Emergency Management up.
Good afternoon, Chair and Committee. Jared Franco, CFO for the Division of Emergency Management and Homeland Security. I am here today to request the approval of $1 million in ARPA funding to remodel our Nevada Operations Center. To ensure we are accommodating all staff and visitors' access and functional needs, move electrical, and order some furniture once completed. We currently have employees that work for our division that cannot access most areas of the Emergency Operations Center because of their mobility issues. I would like to add we have worked with Public Works and have received assurities that we can obligate this money quickly with the statewide contracts they currently have with private contractors, and the project can be done well before the December 2026 deadline. With that, I'll entertain any questions you may have.
Just one quick question for myself. With respect to these funds that are being sought to be obligated, I'm assuming you've reached out, and I didn't look at the backup, but the money is consistent with what could be used by ARPA coronavirus state fiscal funds?
Thank you, Madam Chair, for the question. Jared Franco, DEM, for the record. Yes, all costs of this project are ARPA available.
Thank you. Members, do we have any other questions? I will go to Assemblywoman Brown-May.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you. Just as a matter of clarification, the backup documents state that you're working to become compliant with the Americans with Disabilities Act, but there are additional regulations that have been passed since then which are a little bit more forgiving for wider wheelchairs and accessibility issues. And I'm just curious to know if that is indeed the outcome that you're striving for.
Thank you for the question through you, Madam Chair. Ma'am, yes, we are striving to accommodate all ADA guidelines and regulations. The project will, in fact, allow for all wheelchairs and employees and visitors with disabilities to be able to access all parts of the Emergency Operations Center.
Do we have any other questions from members of our committee? Okay. With that, I would entertain a motion to approve items T4 and T5.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move to approve T4 and T5.
I have a first from Senator Don Darrell-Loop and a second from Speaker Yeager. Is there any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. The motion carries. Thank you so much, sir. And we will now we're almost done. We're on agenda item U, public comment. Once again, I realized it's important to provide the telephone number. For those that wish to make public comment, can call in to area code 669-900-6833. And then when prompted to provide the meeting ID, please enter 820-5250-4671, followed by the pound sign. And then also when it's asked for your participant ID, simply press the pound sign. At this time, we'll invite folks up to the dais in Las Vegas to give public comment. Remember, we are limiting public comment to 2 minutes. Doesn't look like we have anyone here in Las Vegas. We will go up to Carson City. Are there any folks in Carson City wishing to give public comment? Doesn't look like there's anyone up there. Last but not least, we'll go to the phone lines. BPS, is there anyone on the phone lines wishing to give public comment?
Chair, the line is open and working, but there are no callers at this time.
Thank you so much. And our last agenda item V is adjournment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good job.
Thank you.